Hi, everybody. Welcome to our live stream. This is Grace Young Foster, founder and CEO of the Initiative. And it's great to have all of you with us today. Really excited about our live stream event. We've got my friend Leah on with us, and we're so excited to talk to you and share with you about our collaboration next Saturday. But before we get into that, I wanted to remind you to feel free to engage with us. We'd love to hear from you in the event comments as we uh, hear more about Leah's story and what we're doing together next week. So please do share your thoughts and your feedback with us. And I want to introduce Leah a little formally. She's a friend of mine, and we know each other from the adoptee world, but we've been getting to know each other a little bit professionally. And just the company that she's built is pretty amazing. And her priority focus and the way that she helps people elevate into executive level careers is so profound. And so I just want to share a little background with you. So Leah Brighton is an executive communications coach and the founder and principal of Dream Career Today. She's coached leaders across industries so they can have their dream career. This experience, combined with her master's in speech science from First Career as a speech language pathologist, equips Leah with a unique intersection of skills. She applies the core fundamentals of speech science to equip leaders with an unfair advantage for them to sculpt their executive brand, authority, and influence so they can be seen, heard, promoted, and paid. Yes, yes. That's awesome. Welcome, Leah. How are you?
Oh, Grace, I'm so thrilled to be here. I always love our chats and also love what you have started and launched as well with the Inclusion Initiative, and feel that, the voices and perspectives of those from pretty unique communities are so important to be heard. And that's honestly a big part of what, who I work with today is people who really feel like they're wanting to be heard. They know that they have a message, a vision inside of them for their workplace, for what they're able to actually give and the gifts that they have been bestowed, but they don't feel like they're being seen. And the biggest secret, quite honestly, is that it comes down to how you communicate your value. So I'm thrilled to be here, have a chat about what that actually means, kind of unpack that a little bit more. But thanks so much for the invitation to connect more with folks in your network as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm excited about our collaboration next week. But before we dive into that, can you tell us a little bit about Dream Career Today? Like what led you to build it and launch it, and tell us a little bit about your journey.
Sure. So for Dream Career Today, as far as what I focus on as an executive communication coach, is helping people to find their voice so that they can be heard. And it really, if we take a step back, like Grace, actually, I'm an adoptee. So I grew up in an orphanage until I was 4.5 years old. And I only spoke Korean. And I joined my family here in Canada. And guess what? They did not speak Korean.
Mm.
And so I grew up with this like at that age, I really learned, very personally what it's like to quite literally not be heard and not be understood. And that experience, transcended into, like, I think, had a really profound impact because it made me understand at a very young age the importance of being heard and how critical that is in honestly all aspects of your life, but certainly at work. And so being able to now help people to have their voice, find their voice, and truly use it so that they can be in the roles, have the opportunities, have the compensation, and really have like the career that they want so that they're seen, heard, valued, promoted, and paid. And that's really, how I got to be here today. It's grounded in my first career. I was a speech scientist as a speech pathologist. And I think I know what that career really taught me is that being an effective communicator is a learnable skill.
Yeah.
It's not something that's just bestowed upon the lucky few, which a lot of people seem to think, right? They look at somebody, like the Martin Luther Kings or whoever else you think is like an amazing orator. But speaking and effective communication, certainly within the workplace, it's a skill that you can learn. And speaking is also what I did when I was a speech scientist. Those people I worked with at the time, they usually had, clinical implications for what their speech needs were, but it's coordinating and knowing how to use all of the muscles in your face, in your mouth, coordinated with your lungs, in your larynx, to make this whole symphony come together. And that's how you make music.
I love that. Music as a form of communication
Yeah.
with like how you talk and
Yes.
how you project. That's
Yeah.
something that people don't really think about. They think about words,
Mhm.
they think about sounding smart, right? But like you're talking about like presence and
Mhm.
also impact through vocal intonation and how you use your physical parts of your body to project the sound too. That's so interesting. A little bit of like background about me. I was a music minor in undergrad, so like I was a singer. So this like is interesting to me. It's interesting. I've never really thought about how that kind of correlates.
Mhm.
So what about I guess when you had your career as a speech pathologist and then you did pivot after that
Mhm.
too, right? Like you work for the Canadian government, is that right?
Mhm.
Or parliament. Ta- like tell me a little bit about the transitions that you had and then kind of that aha moment to okay, this is why dream career today makes sense.
Yeah. So what I've been in three very distinct industries. So you're right, Grace. In my second career, um, I was a policy advisor in the Senate Leadership Office here in Canada. So Canada we call it like a bicameral institution. So in order to pass any laws in Canada, they have to be passed both in the House of Commons and in the Senate. The Senate Leadership Office. And then the Leadership Office is the office that kind of determines the flow of where bills and legislature, where they're sent to, for what committees, debate on the floor in the Senate chamber, et cetera, who the sponsor will be. And really what I saw certainly in this setting, I mean, this is where literally the laws of our country are being formed. Multilateral agreements with other countries are also being formed, debated, and agreed upon. And if you wish to have your law passed in the way that you're hoping for it to actually be advocated for your interests and stakeholders, et cetera, you must be an effective communicator. It's
Yeah.
not optional. It's not just about doing your job. And quite honestly, part of doing your job is being an effective communicator. And that was also, I mean, if you want to talk about like the real tangible implications on a much broader scope outside of just you as an individual, but it's the scope of laws for, all 40 million Canadians that are in the country. These are the laws, the words, the communication, the speeches, the negotiations, all those conversations, and how effective you are as a communicator has massive implications. And so in that career, I certainly saw that, whether you're debating in the House of Commons, debating in the Senate chamber, debating during committee, speaking to the media, there's all of these different places where being an effective communicator is critical. And then within, on a very different scale, individuals and their careers, right? And companies and how they're able to communicate with their employees. Communication is like such like an I think I see the world just through the lens of communication. Mathematicians see the world through numbers, artists see the world through like paint and colors. But I really just see how communication is a thread. And I feel that it's in part, as a bias, I guess, because I'm a speech scientist, is that of all the creatures on the planet, there are many, right? From like the smallest ant to the largest elephant. We are the only creatures that have true language. And so Noam Chomsky, we call him the forefather of linguistics, modern day linguistics.
Yeah.
One of the key elements of language and communication is being able to say a sentence that's never been said before, right? And we're the only creatures. We are the only creatures on the entire planet that can say that. So
Yeah.
I could say, like the four purple elephants are dancing on Neptune in 2067. I am sure that has never been said before since the dawn of time to now. It probably will never be said again. Maybe Elon Musk will make that happen. Who knows? We don't know. But the to your point and to your question, Grace, as far as what that thread is, for me, what I really see is from when I was a speech scientist to when I was a policy advisor in the Senate Leadership Office to now as an executive communication coach, the thread is how powerful and potent and effective communication can be for your authority, for your impact, for your influence, and for individuals in their career for them to get promoted and paid. Because if the consequence is if you're not an effective communicator, you won't, certainly in the House of Commons or in government, it'll be very difficult for you to get your legislation passed. It'll be very difficult to work with certain stakeholders that you need to or
Yeah.
collaborate, etc. And then for employees, it'll be very difficult to get the promotion they want, to get the budget that they might have for their proposal, to make their presentations to the board, to secure that funding, to get that promotion. And even for companies and how they're able to communicate or facilitate communication within their teams, that is so critical as well. Because the research is so clear that cohesive teams, I mean, far outperform any other team that is even mildly, we'll say, has a bit of friction. We'll just call it that. So I've always loved communication. I love language. I think it's so much fun. And I feel that it's just such an amazing gift to be able to share this perspective because it's not as though you have to learn how to talk. You've already done the hard work. You can talk. I can talk. Most people can talk, right? I mean, I had patients who couldn't talk, but
Yeah.
you can talk for the most part, or you have some modality of being able to communicate typically. And all it then is modifying some moves, some small tweaks to giant peaks. That's one a phrase that my mentor Eileen Wilder likes to say. And that difference, though, those small tweaks to giant peaks can be massive, like Mount Everest peaks in what you're actually able to achieve and accomplish with communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Really love that. And I love your thought behind it, just the amount of technical knowledge and expertise that you're bringing to this. So tell me a little bit about like when you started to launch Dream Career Today and building it into what it is now. Tell us a little bit about, I guess, how it started and some of the success that you've had with your clients.
Yeah. So it's Dream Career Today has been a hybrid of different roles and services that we've provided with our clients. So I've worked with some companies for their hiring and executive search needs, including like Instacart. I previously was in-house at Wealthsimple, which is a very large fintech here in Canada.
Yeah.
And really, when I've done executive search, so I've had a number of companies request that my recruitment agency does certain options for searches. And what I consistently found was that the candidates, once you're at a certain level, essentially once you're a manager slash director, you're going to be phenomenal at your job. So I have to say, like the content, which is like how you're able to do the job. If you're an accountant, CP, CFO, etc., you're going to be great at your forecasting, your analysis, etc. But the candidates who were actually hired were the ones who had the right container. So who were able to effectively communicate their value. So I often think of it as like your content, so your ability as a CFO, et cetera, or an architect, a CTO, chief technical officer. That is your content, but your container will shape how people hear your content. So it will be shaped as far as like if your ideas are like I think they're like beautiful diamonds and gems that you have, jewels that you have to share with the world. But if it's covered within a shoebox, that will be perceived very differently than if that container is wrapped in, say, a Tiffany's box.
Yeah.
And so, as far as some of the people who I've worked with that have personally really experienced how transformative that can be. There was one individual I worked with. Um, she was a director at the AGO, so she was already quite senior at the AGO, and there were some opportunities. There was an opportunity, which is the AGO is one of the a very large, well, the largest art gallery in Ontario,
Oh,
like
wow.
provincially. It's a very large art gallery, and so in Toronto, anyways, Toronto is our largest city within Canada. And so she was already in a very senior position, but she could never ascend for like more senior opportunities. Like they never quite saw her as that leadership role. And maybe that's some people who are, listening to the stream or into the replay. Maybe that you have an ability, gifts, talents to be able to have a vision, share that vision,
Hmm.
recruit with your team, and then execute. Whether maybe it's for a new product launch, maybe it's for a new division, maybe it's for a new feature, whatever that might be. You know that you have this capacity, but for whatever reason, your team doesn't see you in that role. And they'll give you lots of different reasons. The timing isn't right. The
Yeah.
market isn't right. We don't have
Yeah.
budget. We don't have headcount. But then suddenly they hire externally
Yep.
and suddenly they do have budget,
Yep.
right? So for this individual, that's what happened to her. And so there was an opportunity to be the CEO of the National Art Gallery of Canada. The National Art Gallery of Canada there's one role, there's one CEO. I think it's similar to, I was speaking to an American friend of mine, and she was saying it's similar to like the Smithsonian. So it's like
Wow.
it's the highest art gallery you can have in the entire country. It's the
Wow.
largest one, and it's appointed by the Prime Minister. So it is a cabinet appointment role that's federally funded. And there's one position in the entire country. And so she applied. It seemed like it was a stretch. Like obviously she was not the CEO of her current art gallery. And so she was suddenly gunning for not just any CEO role, but the largest art gallery appointed by the Prime Minister. And so I worked with her for, her candidacy process, et cetera. We did some additional strategies that I'm very familiar with as far as being an executive search, and she got the job.
Wow.
And it's not as though she suddenly became a CEO. She was always a CEO, but she wasn't able to communicate the value of so that other people could see it and so that she could get hired. And the result was it changed her life, her career, her husband, her two kids. They were
Yeah.
all relocated to the nation's capital here in Ottawa. They had it fundamentally changed the trajectory of what was possible for every subsequent chapter that she has now had opportunities for in her career.
Yeah.
And it really, I think that story, when I think of that candidate specifically, is it really just shows that this story that we have been told all our lives, you just have to work harder. You have to get another degree. You have
Hmm.
to get more letters behind your name for whatever certifications. It's not about working harder. You can work as hard as you can to build a house just with a hammer and nails. But really, what you need is to work smarter or work higher at the level of communication to use your existing knowledge, use your existing skill set, and just make sure that other people can hear you. And that alone is a much more effective way to unlock whatever you want in your career. Mhm.
Yeah. And with this particular person, I mean, like working with you basically changed, right? Her probably like her mindset too about herself and her capabilities and like how she presented herself moving forward. So that's pretty phenomenal. And now now she's a cabinet appointed like
Mhm.
leader.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's amazing. Um, so pivoting a little bit because you and I both share adoption journeys and we share lived experience as adoptees.
Mhm.
Um, when we connected and we've had our conversations, we've talked a bit about, just like the things that adoptees, foster alums, people that go through child welfare, like just, the challenges we have in terms of being able to own our own narratives, to own our own voices, because we've been spoken for our much of our lives.
Mm.
And so our stories have been told on behalf of us. We have often, many adoptees, especially here in the US, like, our voices are not always front and center, right? When we talk about the adoption experience, when we talk about just our lives, right? Our voices are usually drowned out by all of the dominant voices and narratives that surround the adoption community. And while, that's not true for everyone, that's true for a lot of folks that share our identity. And for me personally, navigating things like career, like leveling up in my professional endeavors, like asking for promotions, raises, speaking up for me and my value and my worth, that's always been more challenging for me personally. I was good at faking it, right? But not always confident inside that I was really projecting authentic confidence and having the tools necessary to be convincing, but also like be able to, exude that confidence that I needed to make these opportunities happen and to be given these chances, right? And it's interesting to me that even though there's a lot of conversation and support in the workplace for these kinds of tools and resources, right? I started the Inclusion Initiative because adoptees, fosters, like our lived experience is unique in the approach that we take and the support and resources and tools that would really help us, right, as individuals. It's different. Like we're not going to tackle, right, confidence or things like navigating imposter syndromes, things like that. Those things that you get a lot of support in professional settings. We're gonna need a different kind of language, a different kind of approach for us to feel individually, right, that these resources and tools are gonna make a difference for us, that we can relate to them and really utilize them to honor the experiences that we've had. And so I just love that you have this lens, right, of this experience of being an adoptee, of literally not being able to be heard because you didn't even know the language when you first came to the state or to Canada. And right, the communication was so limited, right? You have like that very tangible example of like how just our lived experiences impact our ability to communicate and communicate confidently and really right take ownership of our own authority of our own voices. And so tell me a little bit about why it's important to you to include adoptee experience, adoptee perspectives, adoptee voices, and fosters too, right? People that have experienced the child welfare system. Like, why is this important for you in including us in Dream Career today?
Yeah. I mean, I would love to have adoptees be like ascend into leadership positions, like more adoptee representation, perspectives, and voices. And I think there's one famous adoptee like Steve Jobs, who was a domestic adoptee in the US. But in general, I feel that there's a different level of perspective in being inclusive when you are othered in a different kind of capacity at certain points of your life. And I think that that's really a lens that provides a different frame when whether you're making a product, whether you're doing marketing or communications, whether you're doing like thinking of operations, whether maybe you're leading even DE&I, right? I know that there are so many different groups within DE&I, but I do feel that if you have some kind of experience, whether it is you haven't had a voice for whatever reason, or you have some other kind of different, unique life experience, I think it provides you with I don't know, like in Canada, we say the Senate is the place of sober second thought, right?
Mm.
It's the role that it's supposed to serve. And I do feel that when you have an othering experience that is unique, it doesn't have to be negative. Like there's no judgment for however your story has unfolded. And some people have had like the classic Hollywood, I call it the Hallmark story.
Yep.
So there's like a whole range, and the whole range, at both polarities and everything in between. But I do feel that when you have had some kind of different experience and you've also done the work to explore it and reflect on it, so
Yeah.
that's really important. It's a critical component as well, because lots of people have not, which is also fine. We all have our own journeys. But I do feel that having that voice is really unique. And I think, in my professional, like in my personal experience, but a long time ago now, when I was an employee for another company, there are definitely certain assumptions that come as an adult, as an Asian person, right? Obviously, I'm an Asian
Yeah.
female, and people assume that I have like the classic Asian immigration story, and
Yeah.
I certainly do not. And I think that, yeah, I think that some people have also some very specific perspectives, we'll say, about being an adoptee, and like what that means. Certainly, if they come from certain cultural communities as well. And so I've certainly experienced some interesting, say, interesting, colorful thoughts shared towards me because I am adopted.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, I did not have the language for how to necessarily navigate that, navigate those kinds of comments that were quite inappropriate. And I really feel that it's important that we help equip people to. So help equip people within their career to communicate their value, but also help equip you as an employee, as a person who exists in this universe and on our planet, to be able to, communicate who you are and really be able to show up in the way and be seen, hopefully, in the way that you would like to be seen.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And we're thrilled to be included like this
Yeah.
and just have the opportunity, right, to learn, right, how to command communication to level up into these executive level roles, but also just to better advocate for ourselves in our
Mhm.
careers.
Mhm.
So thank you so much for that. And I'm just sharing this link for our event next Saturday. Do you want to share a little bit about, folks that sign up, what they can expect next week?
Yeah. So next Saturday we will have a full afternoon, and I'll be sharing some of the secrets as far as how you can actually make sure that you're heard, heard, seen, promoted, and paid. Because it's not simply about you doing a good job and getting a good performance review. Importantly, it's about that being reflected in the value that a company is bestowing upon you, which is your compensation. So I'll be diving deep into my framework for how to make sure that you actually set yourself up to make music when you communicate across whatever room you're in or stage that you're on. So that room might be a Zoom room, that room might be the boardroom, that stage may be in front of your company at the AGM, or that stage may be CNN, CBC, CTV, when you're communicating to whatever your quarterly earnings are, or maybe if you have a new project or sprint that your company is releasing. So we'll be diving deep into that. And, I'll talk a little bit more as far as strategies that I know, as somebody who's led an executive search, helped so many, like thousands of candidates kind of across their careers, in their communication, what really will make you stand out, regardless of what the economy is. You can make your
Yeah.
own employment economy and create your own opportunities. What I always like to say is to create your future. And that is what we'll be speaking about next Saturday.
Yay. Yeah, I love that. Big round of applause for that. Create your future. Yeah, and just
Mhm.
empower yourself. I love
Mhm.
that. And I'm thrilled to be speaking at your event next week and joining in and learning myself. So, thank you again for the opportunity. Everyone, again, it is next Saturday, November 23rd. Join us, sign up with this link, dreamcareertoday.com/inclusion-initiative. And we cannot wait to see you there with us. So, Leah, it was so wonderful having you on our live stream today. Thanks so much for your time and just this opportunity to learn from you next week. So, thank you. And we will see you then, everybody. Take care. Bye.
Bye.